Alright guys, welcome back. We have a new season and Ryzeal is officially here, and now we are going to talk about the 5 best decks as always. When we have a new season, a new month, a new pack that you can bring this month to the ladder and dominate in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. So for my number 5 and number 4, I have two kind of like sleeper picks I want to present you. The first one being a Labyrinth. I always think Labyrinth is a nice choice in different formats, especially if there is 1 or 2 decks that are very dominant. Obviously in this meta environment, this is Ryzeal and then also Maliss, and this is just a list I threw together, and I think this is something that Labyrinth could look like, because you can just put in traps that are super effective against these prominent strategies. I think the most important things here in the deck, obviously if you go first, then this deck is super strong and you will win most of your games, also because people are obviously not having cards like Duster or Lightning Storm in their main deck. I think the most important thing here when going second is, and this is why we want to go 40 cards here to get your Arias, the Labyrinth Battler, in combination with some of these impactful traps. This could be in the sense of Maliss Artifact Sanctum, where you can place the Artifact Sanctum activated to grab an Artifact Lancia. You could bump this up to 3, or in the case of Ryzeal, you play the Mischief of the Gnomes, if you're not aware this turn. Reduce the level of all monsters in each player's hand by 1 even after they are summoned set. So Ryzeal can basically do nothing if they don't play the Fiendsmith variant, and even then it's not that much. What they then can establish you will normally be able to break. So it also depends, I guess, on what you face. If you face a lot of Ryzeal, which I guess you should face more Ryzeal than Maliss, since this is the newer deck and people are kind of sick of Maliss already, you should put in more Mischief of the Gnomes, which is nice. This is only a normal card, where this is an ultra rare. But yeah, this is basically the way to find more Artifact Lancias. You obviously can just put in Artifact Lancias if you want to. And then we also play cards like the Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, which can basically shut down the turns of a lot of different decks, which is why, yeah, this is super great in combination with the Arias. And also you can, or your opponent cannot really interact with this, because this just like discards itself and then, yeah, activates the trap. I guess Called By would work, but this is basically the only card. No other hand trap can stop this. And then we also can, and this is another cool thing, play Dominus Impulse, which is very strong against Ryzeal and Maliss. We can play cards like Black Goat Loves, and we in our extra deck can also in theory make DDWF High Caesar. This is why there are a few Bistiles in here, because Caesar is obviously great against Maliss, and the Bistiles are nice against something like Blue Eyes if you should ever face that. Obviously you're going second win rate will most likely be a bit worse, but this is just how it is with this deck. I think this is still kind of fine, because sometimes you can just set all your spells traps and then pass over. Against Ryzeal this might be a bit of a problem, because they can just pop them, but I think if you can do it in the correct way and you play the deck also very good, this is very important, you need to know how to play the deck, then this can be very, very successful in this current meta. Ryzeal Maliss just depends on what you are facing, then you should switch up these traps here obviously. My number 4, also a sleeper pick, goes to this Goblin Memento list, Goblin Biker Memento list I should say, which has one YCS Houston. I went ahead and just copied it, and now that I think about this, I totally forgot to put in Maxis. I mean, it's obviously yeah, on purpose that there are no Ash Blossoms in here. We will most likely just replace these with Maxis, and then we have one Fuva. But yeah, this is what it basically looks like. You might also want to go Ash Blossoms, so minus the Fuvas, maybe minus the Talents, and put in Ash Blossoms so that you can counter opponents' Maxis. I guess this makes a lot of sense. Other than that, this I forgot when putting this list together, but yeah, this is obviously a TCG list, and now it's more of a Master Duel list. But this is how the list looks like, and I think in this current environment, this is kind of nice. We are combining Memento with Goblin Bikers. This is also why we play 2 Mementotlin Goblin, which is a card you can also summon with the Goblin Biker Grand Breakout. But we are also playing Goblin Biker Duck Charger and 1 Search card, which can basically either add the Goblin Memento Goblin, which makes our plays more consistent, or can add the Goblin Biker Duck Charger. We are also playing the boss monster here, and the cool thing is that both of these cards, this one can special summon a Goblin monster from hand, so either the Mementotlin Goblin or the Goblin Biker Duck Charger, by detaching 1 XYZ material from a monster on either field. So if you play into a Ryzeal field, and this is why the person played this back in YCS Houston, you can basically detach from the Ryzeal detonator or from the Duo Drive, and then special summon either your Duck Charger or your Mementotlin Goblin, which in Memento this is big, because you have your normal summons, and you would need to normal summon this guy. If you have already used up your normal summon, then this can basically extend, and yeah, you can basically search this with the Duct Charger, but you can also, if this card is in your hand, detach one material from a monster on either field end if you do special summon this card. So you can use these to basically get rid of material from the detonator and get more special summons, get more extensions, which is obviously kind of nice. And we are playing this Speedroid Terratogmantaka Tomborg package here just to go into our Goblin Biker Big Kabonga to get these cards out of our deck basically. You can also just overlay them for something like a Bamboo Sling Gossip Shadow, and then we also play where is the guy, this Armored Torpedo guy, where you can draw a card. I think you can then overlay them with the Utopic Draco future stuff, and then obviously we are playing the Memento deck here as our core strategy, having the ability to dodge a lot of effects here with the fusion, with the Bone Party, and also with the Grand Breakout. You could bump this up to more Grand Breakouts if you wanted to, but this is basically the ratio that the guy played, minus the Fuvas that we put out in the Maxis and Ash Blossoms that we just put in here. But yeah, this is potentially a list that you could play. This is, by the way, the Utopic Future, Draco Future, Bamboo Sling, Gossip Shadow, and Armored Torpedo. And this, if you're wondering, is Donner, Dagger, Fur, Hire. All of these other cards should be known and are basically common in any Goblin deck, Speedroid Terratop and Take Tomborg. And I think this is kind of a nice build that could work really well, especially if you face a lot of Ryzeal opponents, the Goblin Biker Memento deck. My number 3, and I think there is a big gap to the 2 best decks in the format, is Primite Bistile Control with Fiendsmith. We have seen this before being very successful against Maliss. I think this can also work against Ryzeal. Very important. I will go over these ratios in a second here. I just wanted to show you some cards. But what I would definitely put in is something like the Drone Lockbird. Very nice against Ryzeal. The Artifact Lancia. Very nice against Maliss. You could argue about this Effect Vader being here. It's kind of nice against both, but it's also not hyper impactful. I think having Bistiles here is very nice. Bistile Jerusalem at 3 I think is kind of a must, because if you're not aware, Bistile Jerusalem is a very nice out to the detonator. You can just summon him and then attack into the detonator and then clear him, or you can just summon him, get him to the graveyard and then target the detonator, sending him away. And because we don't have Eclipse Twins, this is even better at the moment. So I think Jerusalem is definitely a must. Yeah, and then are some ratios here that you could definitely change up. So you could either play more hand traps like these Nipsey, for example, or you go for some of these breakers like Metal Tronus and Ultimate Slayer, which can definitely help you against Maliss as well as Ryzeal. Ultimate Slayer targets one extra deck monster on the field and you send another one away with the same type, and then you just clear this and they can't react. So you have your links that you can use for an Appaloosa in the Maliss board. You have Synchro, you have XYZs, you have fusions, you have basically everything available in your deck already. What I would add, if you want to go for the Ultimate Slayer route, I would add a Mirror Logic Aggregator in here so that you can target the Ryzeal detonator, send this aggregator, and aggregator in the graveyard can then negate, for example, the Ryzeal Cross. If you are going to play the Metal Tronus, then you would optimally go obviously with the Ryzeal detonator here, and then maybe with something like, you could either go for the Appaloosa or you could go for the White Binder, because if you're not aware, Metal Tronus is basically targeting a monster on the field. You summon, you can summon the same monster and banish them both face down and negate them, or you can summon a monster which has 2 or more of the same type, attribute, and or ATK, and then it only negates basically. So there's the difference that you need to keep in mind. But this is how you could basically build your control list here. Once again, you have to definitely decide on the ratios here. Do you want to play these Veilers? I think Drolls are very nice. I think Lancias still make sense, because you can also just protect your place basically when, I don't know, you start with something like a Droll and Lockbird, or the opponent is caught buying that, then you can drop the Lancia and your Droll will resolve. I think this is kind of nice. Other than that, we are just using this to control, grind out the game, and this is basically the same like it was before, just with a bit of a different tech cards. So yeah, depending on what you have here, because a lot of them are ultra rares, you can kind of go and match it together as it fits for you. You could also go ahead and, I guess, play Book of Eclipse, which is a super rare. This would obviously be better against mainly Ryzeal, so this also depends on what you see on the ladder, on your specific part of the ladder. This is only a super rare, but this is not nice against Maliss, so this is a bit of a downside, whereas the Metal Tronus and the Ultimate Slayer are kind of good against both. But decide on what you have, decide on what you want to play and where you want to invest. But I think this control deck here can be very successful successful against the top 2 meta decks. And then honestly, I think both decks on the first and second place here, you kind of know what the first place is, are basically interchangeable. So you could definitely make an argument for Maliss being the best deck. You can make an argument for Ryzeal being the best deck. I think they are very, very close in terms of power level. This depends more on whether a lot of people are on Ryzeal, which means there are not a lot of Lanciers being in the main deck, and if there are not a lot of Lanciers in the main deck, then I think Maliss might be the better deck, and if there is more Maliss and a lot of people are playing the Lancier in the main deck, then Ryzeal might be the better deck. So they are super, super close. It's tough to say, but they are definitely better than anything else in the entire field. These are definitely the strongest decks in the game here in my Maliss list. I've quickly updated this with Metal Tronus and Ryzeal Detonator because Maliss definitely struggles going second into a Ryzeal board. The Detonator is an extremely good card against Maliss, having the ability to just destroy all the bodies, and you need your bodies for your link climb plays, basically, which is where a Ryzeal Detonator is extremely good. Ryzeal Detonator also outs the Maliss in Underground, so Maliss in Underground as a starter doesn't work at all against Ryzeal Detonator because he can just pop the field spell and then nothing happens and you've used your field spell. Here I'm also playing the Bistile Worms. Could bump this up to one more in theory if that is needed, but yeah, Maliss still super, super strong, and I think even stronger at the moment because there will be less Artifact Lanciers since Ryzeal is also there to dominate a part of the meta. People will put this card out of their main deck. I already done this with Ryzeal when I climbed the ladder myself and didn't really regret it. So I think, funnily enough, the introduction of Ryzeal makes Maliss better, but Ryzeal is still super strong, so they are basically on the same power level. Okay, and here's my number one, obviously Ryzeal. Once again, you can change this up with the Maliss deck if you want. I have made the arguments already. This is the list I use to climb. I'm super happy with the list. This is super consistent. We calculated it. I'm not tired of bringing this up. A 91.6% chance of opening a one card combo, basically, which is your Ascension, your Tachyon, your Ice Ryzeal, your Sword Ryzeal, your X Ryzeal, or your Bonfire. And yes, you can also play without the Ascensions. If you're wondering, you want to go first for the Tachyons here because the Ascension is the card searching the Tachyon. So this just searches this, right? So if you have this, you don't need this, but don't craft these and don't have these, then you have a problem because then nothing happens. So if you want to go for a 3 Tachyon and then don't get the Ascensions, that's also fine. It will just be less consistent. Maybe you should put in a Pot of Desires then, or I don't know, just live with less consistency. Maybe go for 1 or 2 depending on what your budget gives you. You can also play the Fiendsmith variant. Obviously there's also, I've seen this, the Voiceless Voice Ryzeal variant, which if you have the Voiceless Voice core already, it's nice because then you don't need to craft as many Ryzeal cards. You definitely do not need to craft these Tachyon cards here. So there are definitely cheap options that you can go for. Another option would be using the Shark package if you already have this. But if you have the Shark package, which would be 3 times the Surfing Big Jars, and then I think once the Drake Shark. I think this is the order, or maybe the other way around, 3 Drake Sharks, 1 Surfing, but I think it's 3 Surfing. This is also an ultra rare, and if you have this Shark card or the Shark deck, then you might also just have this 7 Tachyon because it's being played there. So yeah, then you can also play this pure variant if you want to. I think the pure variant is the best one, better than the Fiendsmith variant. In my opinion, this obviously is also the case because people are not main decking Dimensional Barrier, because against Dimensional Barrier, the Fiendsmith version is obviously better because you can do something under Dimensional Barrier. This was more a TCG thing because we have a side deck there. But yeah, Ryzeal, my personal number one pick. But once again, Ryzeal Maliss kind of on the same level. So yeah, this is kind of interchangeable. And if you want to learn this deck, learn how to play this deck, or play maybe also the Maliss deck, I have guides for both of these decks. I also upgraded the Ryzeal guide because we didn't get the Eclipse Twins, not the biggest of deals. I also have made a pinned comment there where I explain what this means for the combos, not much actually. So yeah, you can learn these decks. I have linked the Ryzeal guide in the top right corner, and you can find the Maliss guide also on my channel. Thanks for being here. Let me know in the comments what your opinion on these 5 top decks is. What are you playing this season? Let me know. And if you liked the video, please consider subscribing, hitting a thumbs up and the notification bell. We will see each other in the next one.